This is Calcat, the Calcaster, and this is a review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I believe episode 4 or 5? Somewhere, is it 4 or 5? The Case of Chiaroscuro, I think it's 4. Yeah, doppelgangers. Um, yes, so, yeah, it's an odd one. They go to a planet of number one, and Dr. Mbenga and Uhura go to a planet, this planet where it part of the solar system. There's a black body in orbit, so it's a bit like Giedi Prime in Dune, in that they have a black sun of Giedi Prime, and I figure that they like that means that there's another star that's kind of blocking their sun in an orbit. Somehow the planet is tidally locked to that body that's causing it to be black and white, like on Giedi Prime. Um, so there's like the planet is in orbit of the tidally locked second star, just like Giedi Prime looks like that. But also that makes zero sense cosmically, but that's kind of cool. You would think that a black body would kill the planet because there wouldn't be any photosynthesis on the planet. Uh, Everything would die. It would be all in infrared. It would be weird. It's similar to it's similar to some silly Trek stuff. It's similar to a planet it is similar to the Mob Planet too, the classic Trek, but it's similar to the Colorizer Planet in Silly Trek the game, and I don't know how they knew about that except that I mentioned it before, so maybe they watched it. And that planet had basically an evil version of Ted Turner called Mendrake Cottle, who was running around it. But back then it was just literally Ted Turner. And Ted Turner was a notorious leader of the early version of CNN and Turner Movie Classics, TMZ. And he had colorized a bunch of old movies. And the gag of the Silly Trek story, in high school, mind you, in 1988, was that this is old. Was that we after we were given Q powers by the Q, like Riker in that first episode of TNG at the same time, we decided to go to the planet of Ted Turner, the colorizer planet, and punish them for taking old movies and making them color. That was and because we were children, we didn't know that punishing them, we meant executing them. This messed up. But yes, so later on, Starship Locations went back to a similar colony of that planet, indicating that the Q didn't let us actually execute the leaders of the planet, but let them go, because obviously we couldn't just let go and wipe out the colorizers. That's kind of mean spirited, but we were. It was a story. It was a fiction story. It was later rewritten as a several times into other stories, like the idea of it's basically we were cribbing Casablanca, and so are they. So there's a resistance and a group in Casablanca, the piano thing. So they were riffing Casablanca. I think Core is in this one, or somebody like Core. It's kind of fun. The Klingon makeup looks more like TNG instead of looking like classic Trek, but at least it doesn't look like Discovery, even though it's a spinoff. And their outfits are glittery and stuff, which they would be in black and white. They mentioned a D7. Trek yards should like that. The show. So in the later Mob Planet is TNG, TOS, of course, and then there was sort of a Mob holodeck program, the Big Goodbye, which was visited several times in TNG as well. So they like that idea, the mobster planet things. Although when the classic Trek did something like that, a piece of the action, they were basically just a generation away from having known about the mobs of the 20s. It was the 60s. It was a generation and a half earlier, almost 2 generations earlier, and they were aware of that. And their parents had gone through that, so they knew what that was. To them, it was the 60s. It was only 40 years later. Yeah. Yeah, 35, 40 years later. So yeah, they don't go into that here. Just it reminds me of that. Also, there was a Starcrackers episode, the Space Vanguards episode, of which it was used in the Space Vanguards Advanced Guard Cillian stories. It was rewritten as one, in which they went to that. They went to a very similar resistance planet, planet Rebia, and a very similar thing happened as a result at the end of that, to this episode. That came out like a year and a half ago. They could have watched it. But I was cribbing it from the earlier Silly Track stuff, which was cribbing it for this. So it probably had the same source way back there, piece of the action. So it was a piece of the action. So yeah, we came to the same TOS episode. I also did a Starship Locations episode where we returned to the piece of the action planet in the 2400s, and we got to see what was going on then. There was a mobster guy there who was in charge, and there was a resistance, and the same thing was happening. Yeah, so they watched that episode too. They watched that episode was called Behind the Eight Ball, and it was based on Quentin Tarantino's script treatment that I happened to find online and read it, and go like, oh yeah, his Star Trek movie that would have not been very good as a Star Trek movie. Well, I don't think this episode is Quentin Tarantino's treatment. I think they also read the same thing. I think this comes from that. This comes from Starship Locations and Behind the Eight Ball. They watched that episode. They're like, oh yeah, let's do that on this planet. Okay. The spies and the doppelgangers and all that. Also, there's reference to doppelgangers and the spies and stuff. Maltese Falcon is another thing like that. The spies. And Manchurian Candidate is kind of like that. A bunch of old black and white movies. And you have that were colorized by Ted Turner. So yeah, you have so there's a mob resistance thing. Una has to pretend to be the commander of a resistance force on the planet that wants to activate an EMP. In the Silly Track version, they're just trying to get the treasure, which would change the destiny of the planet in the same way. They're trying to get the holy book that they have. It happens to be the On Location journals in the parody. In the Silly Trek version, there's a crashed starship, and the commander lady in that one is Rumbly. It's Amanda Rumbly, and she's on the planet, and she has affected the timeline's course of history. So they have to go down there and deal with that. So yeah, she's so it's similar. She has to find the book, the space book, before the mobster guys get a hold of it. The Star Trek book that was left behind, and take that book back to the Federation so that their society is not changed. Yeah, but it already has been altered, so they kind of can't do much. Similar here, the results are different. The MacGuffin is different. It's not a book. In this case, it's a detonator for an EMP. It's a little different. So it's more similar to some of the later stuff. It's actually similar to the T.L. Ahrens stuff with Tolomsky and the Transformers. I doubt they read his stuff. What probably happened there again is they probably watched the old Transformers Much episode with that happening in it on the planet of. Well, they watched a lot of my stuff. Why don't they hire me? Come on. They probably didn't. They probably actually took it from spy movies, James Bond movies and stuff. That's probably where they got it. They couldn't have seen all of my stuff. I tended to use tropes, and the MacGuffins are similar to them. Sci-fi fantasy writer, of course, it's going to be similar. It's just that it's similar. It's a coincidence. It's just a weird coincidence. That's all. The colorizers, the planet, this is the most Silly Trek episode so far. And in the other version, they take the book back but the imitators have left behind something else, and that could change the destiny of the planet anyway. So we don't know if the resistance worked, but in this one we don't know if it worked either. Yes, it's as though Cal-Cat pitched this episode to them, but he didn't. I did not pitch this episode. I certainly didn't pitch that puppet episode, which they keep pushing ahead. They don't want to air the puppet episode. They get this one down next. The idea of doing a noir story is not necessarily. Yeah, they could be thinking of a number of things. I'm not saying they got cribbed my material. I'm saying they thought of the same thing at the same time. Very coincidental. It is fun that they did that, and it is. It's kind of hard to watch though. It's all black and white. It's kind of hard to watch. Some line of sight issues in there because it's black and white. I think what they did is they color graded it. It would be kind of funny to color grade this episode and make it black and white, if you want to do that. But no, don't do that. Well, I could do that. It'd be funny. Actually, yeah, I could color. Okay, I'm gonna black and white. When you edit this, black and white. This little segment here. So they know. See. Yeah, it's gonna be. Yeah, it's a lack of color. It's like those movies, you see, with the like that young adult movie with the series. Yeah, young adult the dystopian future. In that movie where they couldn't see color. It doesn't make sense. Yeah. Anyway, color film is expensive, but not when it's digital. Back to the regular color. If you're gonna do that, you may not. So they have to go down to the planet. They have to figure things out. They apparently the commander lady has been the original commander lady, of course, was killed. They find that and there is a weasel guy that wants to kill the commander lady later on when she's gonna go into the base. Even though so basically he figures out because he was a murderer. He shows up as a murderer. He's all the other ones were red herring until this one at the end. And he shows up and he's he's holding the gun with one hand. Yeah, if you're gonna shoot somebody, you don't hold them with one hand. You hold them with two hands. You can hold it with one hand, but it's but you hold it with one hand, so she has an opportunity to bat it out of the way. And, yeah, space gun. Don't do that though. Don't. Yeah, only in the movies that works. Don't do that. So yeah. But yeah. So there's like a Casablanca feel to it. It's got there's a lot of whispering in it. That's kind of annoying. But yeah. No respect to Babs there, who does the doctor. But yeah, how did he get into Hollywood with a raspy voice like that? I just don't know. And then there's another subplot where the security chief Leon is trying to uncover what happened to the probe that wandered into this weird space where color doesn't exist. And it would affect the Enterprise too. That wouldn't work. I don't know why they think that would work. If they're inside a vessel and they're near this black body object, it's I guess negative space kind of black body object, it wouldn't affect a vehicle that you're inside. If you're in, yeah, the sunlight's not hitting you at all, it wouldn't do anything. Yeah. Yeah, the sunlight, if the sunlight's penetrating, if there's radiation penetrating the shuttlecraft, they're screwed. And or the Enterprise, and they shouldn't be seeing black and white on the Enterprise. It should be normal, and the shuttle should be normal. You get to the planet, then color perception is messed up. It's a cool idea just to do a black and white film episode, but really you kind of it doesn't really make sense. It just sounds cool. Giedi Prime or this other planet. And Giedi Prime makes a little more sense because the black body thing could be a shield or a planet. It's probably a star. I think for that one, it's probably like an A-type white star, and there's like a brown dwarf, and the planet is in orbit of the brown dwarf in Giedi Prime. And it's tidally locked to the brown dwarf. So all they see is a constant eclipse of the parent star, and that's why it's the black sun of Giedi Prime. They're Dune fans. I fixed that. And there is that would be Alpha Giedi. There is a star that actually could be the star that Frank Herbert was thinking of. It's Alpha Giedi. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. So that's probably what they were thinking of. So the A-type star, be a little too young to have planets, but they clearly colonized the planet in orbit of the brown dwarf in that show. And this one too, they colonized. Although, yeah. Yeah, a planet that can't see color would be kind of screwed. Late Uncle Bill couldn't see certain colors. Yes. Even though he could paint model ships, apparently he figured out what shades of gray were colored correctly with model ships. Anyway, yes. Anyway, so yeah, a good episode. I kind of rambled on about the other Silly Trek stuff that was similar to, but my Silly Trek stuff was similar to other stuff. Probably the same stuff they saw. I'm sure they did not watch Behind the Eight Ball, and they did not watch the Space Vanguard's trilogy. But if they did, then that's where they got the idea from. Anyway, but they didn't. I'm sure they didn't. Yeah. They let's do a noir thing. That's a cheeky thing. Also about Star Trek is often they realize that there's something other noir that's coming out in black and white, or something else is coming out that they hear about 6 months down the road, and the show's going to air, and so they make an episode about that thing that was a famous Spider-Man noir miniseries that was coming out. It came out when this show was airing. So that was probably kind of what they were thinking of in Casablanca. But yes, yeah, that's probably what they were thinking of. And not the fan film thing. Although when they go to the Mob Planet in the Silly Trek and the Space Vanguards one, and Behind the Eight Ball, they don't, it's not black and white. They don't mess with the colorization thing. That's different. We haven't done that. So the shtick of this one, no, it's a Mob Planet. And they've evolved beyond the 1920s. From that book they saw on the Mob Planet. It was the 2020s at that point, so it was 100 years later. So what were they like in the 21st century on the planet? So that was kind of fun. But yes, so it was 20. So they adopted 20 years later. They didn't develop Federation technology. They just did it 20 years later, which would be Prime Directive problem, especially if there was a starship in orbit where the captain landed and was messing with it. Well, yes, not intentionally though. She got carried away. Anyway, so that's my review of my sort of roundabout review of Case of Chiaroscuro. Also, the only phrase that sounds remotely like that is the James Blish book, and he wrote Star Trek books, by the way. The James Blish book, A Case of Conscience. So if they wanted to do that one right, though, they would have made them lizards. Of course, then she couldn't go in disguise because they'd be lizards. They'd be like, what? Anyway, just they'd be lizards. That's where Captain Estrogen comes from. Eggridge is the lizard man of Lithia. Also a silly friend. Yes. Yeah. Of course, in the Cillian version, we couldn't make lizard people, so we made just Orion-looking people and colored the action figures look like Orions because you couldn't literally make them look like lizards. Anyway, but that has nothing to do with this story. They already went to the dinosaur Earth, which makes no sense. That episode should have been some alien from the future was fucking them. There really should have been an alien messing with them, saying, like, okay, you really didn't go millions of years back in time. That makes absolutely no sense. No, I was just messing with you. Yeah, come on. Like, no, you just dreamed. Yeah, that was a dream. Come on. It's like... Anyway, so yeah. So this is Cal Katzer again adding to the end of this episode before you download it. Chiaroscuro is an art form relating to the different shades of color, or shades of light and dark and color and things like that, hence the episode title. Also, is the generation now that's writing these stories aware that just because black and white TV and movies were prevalent before the 1960s, that life was not in black and white? Just the movies were, and the TV shows. And most people had if they had a TV set, back in the day, the boomers had a TV set, they were usually black and white. And the color TVs didn't really go on the market for everyone to have color TV. But the studio was still in color. The studios were in color. The actors were color. They weren't suddenly colorblind. They were in color. It's just that when they fill it, yeah, it's like, for instance, the show Lost in Space. It was on the same time as, or the pilot, the Star Trek pilot, The Cage, was originally black and white. There was a color film version. I think that was colorized because they didn't. It wasn't black and white originally. The original Lost in Space for the first season is in black and white. And then it tended to change its color. That was the 60s, 50s and 60s. A lot of TV shows, because most people had black and white television, 4x3 black and white TV. And yeah, so, but people did not see in black and white. They didn't dream in black and white. They would only do that if they were watching a TV show and it affected their mind and they dreamed in black and white. No, they were dreaming in color. It's just like, no. So yeah, they kind of imply in this story that no, everything was literally turned to black and white on this planet due to the black body object image. That's not how that would work. But okay, it's science fiction, fine. Fantasy noir, fine. But yeah, and now it's like unusual for something to be in black and white. Anyway, I just thought I would point that out. That it is an art. It doesn't mean doppelganger. It means art for light and dark, black and white. Literally symbolic. And also weird that there is no official mandate on changing the Paramount shows to be less woke. That's not what's going on. But this episode chickens out, doesn't show the resistance. So in that sense, they don't show what happened after they were shut off the power for a while at the end. So yeah, so it is less woke, but yeah, that's silly. But yeah, so there's no mandate. It's just as for the other Paramount, Ellison stuff, the Ellison brothers, and trying to buy up Warner Brothers and stuff, I have no pony in that race or no dog in that race. I don't know. I've never worked for them, or the Paramount. I just come up with fan film ideas that seem similar over the past 40 years or so. They kind of seem similar to their stuff. It's a really weird and eerie coincidence. But this one didn't do my stories in black and white. Only that one with the Ted Turner planet. It's Paramount wanting to buy up Ted Turner. Formerly Ted Turner was Warner Brothers. So yeah, he doesn't anymore though. It's somebody else. Time Warner sold their shares. Somebody else owns them. Is it Zaslav or something? Somebody like that. Yeah, so, I have no dog in the race about the Paramount merger, or attempted merger. I don't know how it can be both although I don't know how it can be both a monopoly and a monopsy at the same time. A monopoly being one guy's in charge of everything and one company has all the distribution, and a monopsy is one company and one group makes the thing. And that's the only thing. It's similar. It can't be both. It's kind of impossible. So, it's a monopoly. Say it's a monopoly. If the two studios merged, it would be a monopoly. That makes it simple. Okay, one group would be in charge of all the movies. And so I will chime in on that. I'll also say that the Ellison boys' idea. These rich guys, these rich fat cat guys. Their idea of making 30 movies a year is unattainable and untenable. Two big words. They can't do it. Most major Hollywood studios make about a dozen movies a year, which means a movie a month. Yeah. No, they can't do that. It's 30 movies a year. No, they can't double that by having two studios. That's not how that would work. They would end up being able to make 20 movies. Maybe. But you still have to put a cast and a crew together. It takes a while to make a movie. Back in the time of Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager, for the most part, UPN and all that, they had their own thing, Paramount Network. You had 22 to 26 episode seasons, about an hour long, 45 minutes episode each. With commercials, it's an hour. You had a layover of 8 days, typical episode. From script to filming. You had a script written in a day by somebody who just hacked it out. Usually you had to batch of scripts that were being prepared to go into the season, and then you'd film that batch of scripts. So you'd have like, okay, let's start in they start filming in July so they can have it out by September, and they film like a bunch of stuff all together, one after the other, for several weeks, July, August, September, and then by the time they get to September and the beginning of the season, they've got 2 or 3 episodes done, so they air those 2 or 3 episodes. Meanwhile, they're doing a bunch of other ones, and then they get through the whole 26 episodes. They get through about half of them by November, the November sweeps, and then they can go on from there in January. They get a bunch of other ones, November, October. November, December, January, and keep going to about May. And yeah, they used to be able to do that, 26 episode season. Now they do 10 episode seasons. Looks like the layover is 10 days, and they get to come up with, they get like 2.5, 3 weeks to film the episode. Then they film them all back to back. 10 episodes. 10 hours of television. Back. And go. Whatever show it is, that's what they do now. Yeah, so. Anyway, so yeah. And they shuffled these episodes around. They were going to air that puppet episode 2 episodes ago. They shuffled it around. They said, "Oh, we're going to air that next week." They know it's going to suck, so they probably shouldn't air it. But they wanted to get to 1,000 episodes, so they're like, "Okay, we'll have to throw in this goofy one in here," in which we really will pay homage to the Calicat, the action figure thing. But doing it wrong, doing it with Muppets, that doesn't work. It's not Muppets; it's Playmates figures. It should be Q that's doing that, because that otherwise it doesn't make sense. But it probably isn't Q. Yeah. So maybe, maybe it is Q. Still stupid. Yeah. But yes, the noir, the black and white, yeah. Yes, yeah. And Casablanca, that's what they're thinking of. And Maltese Falcon and some other stuff. That's what they're thinking of. So we were all thinking of the same thing years ago. That's all it was. Same 2 old movies. And if you colorized it, Casablanca and Maltese Falcon, it would look like crap. Yeah, that was the point. And no one executed Ted Turner. He died of old age. It was just a silly Trek episode by film dorks in a high school that had no connection to him whatsoever. So it's like that. But yeah, I guess you could say that would make the other guy. There was no official leader in the episode. That was like, except for the Klingon guy. There was no official. He was more of an occupier. There wasn't a colorizer in the story. But yes, it's like Giedi Prime on the planet. Anyway.